Hi, I'm Warren Zenna, founder and CEO of the CRO Collective, and welcome to the CRO Spotlight Podcast. This show is focused exclusively on the success of chief revenue officers. Each week, we have an open, frank, and free-form conversation with top experts in the revenue space about the CRO role and its critical impact on B2B businesses. This podcast is the place to be for CROs, sales and marketing leaders who aspire to become CROs, and founders who are looking to appoint a CRO or want to support their CRO to succeed. Thanks for listening. Now let's go mix it up. Hello and welcome to this episode of the CRO Spotlight Podcast. This is Warren Zenna. I'm the founder and CEO, I guess, of the CRO Collective. And I've been having some really interesting conversations lately with people related specifically to data and the use of data. And I think, frankly, maybe even the over-reliance on data and how, in my view, data has sort of become a default for marketing. And it's in the B2B space anyway, sort of destroyed marketing and the magic that marketing really is. And I've got a lot of feedback on that particular topic. And people are in agreement, right, on this point, because I think we are just swimming in data and we're over-reliant on it. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying data should be eschewed. Of course, it's good. And the fact that we have so much of it, I think, can be helpful. But what happens is I think we have too much of it. You know, we've lost the art of gut feeling as a leader, as a leading generator, a leading indicator of how to do things. And so much of what we do is a lot of magic. Right? So anyway, there's a thought, and we can talk more about that, and probably will be in other topics. But I wanted to introduce our guest today, a gentleman by the name of Frank Nardi, who's the Chief Revenue Officer at Sin7. And I met Frank because, you know, as you know, I'm a loudmouth on LinkedIn all the time. And, you know, it's like when I called one of my my LinkedIn connection friends, or colleagues, right, whom, you know, we get into a banter together on LinkedIn, and we have a great discussion. And it just turns out, you know, I'd like to have this person jump on a call with me and do a podcast, because the topic we're talking about is one that I think is valuable. And I think this person seems like they have the credentials to be able to bring a lot of weight to the topic. And so today we're going to talk to Frank. It was a great conversation. He's really smart, and he's seen a lot from his role as a chief revenue officer. And he's also in agreement with me in terms of the philosophy related to chief revenue officer. So I think you'll really enjoy this conversation. So tune in, and thanks for being here.
Oh, for sure. This is exciting. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, not at all. So, you know, it's funny. A lot of people I meet this way, you know, like I do an engagement on LinkedIn, I'm getting involved in some conversation, and someone comments and they make a smart comment, and then we end up getting into a chat about it. And, I don't know, people put LinkedIn down all the time. I don't know why. I think it's awesome. I mean, it's done so much for me in terms of like my career and bringing out this business. It's invaluable. So I don't know. I'm just curious. What are your thoughts on it? I mean, are you a LinkedIn guy? Do you use X? Like, where are you mostly out there talking?
LinkedIn. I think what I like about LinkedIn is if you spend a little time on it and you build a good network, it really becomes valuable, right? Just like anything, you put a little effort into it, you start to get into the right channels, you connect with the right folks, you get some thought leadership going. I actually like how it's evolved over the last couple of years, right? So if I think back to LinkedIn, maybe 2019 to 2022, when we were all in that, you know, they call it the golden age of SaaS or whatever. I think a lot of what people were talking about, there was so much people doing the same things, right? We were all doing the same things. So there was a lot of the way to get clicks was to be very contrarian, right? So if everyone's doing one thing, you say the other thing, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's an interesting approach, and then all of a sudden you get all the clicks, and you get all the likes, and you get all the interest. But what I've noticed is we moved into that peg now, the profitable, efficient growth mindset. And I think what is interesting to me is there's a lot more folks just trying to help each other forward and try and think forward on LinkedIn. The thought leadership is much more thought provoking. On the path forward isn't so set in stone, right? The path forward is a little bit different now. Everyone's trying to find what is efficiency, what is automation, where do we maximize our team, our people, our tech, our tooling. How do some of the things that got us here, you know, that idea we talk about all the time at Sin7, like what got us here won't get us there. So
Mm-hmm.
what's the what get us there piece of it? And I think the thought leadership has taken a big step forward in the last year and a half for me, at least in the network that I have. A lot of people putting out really good thought provoking content about like, hey, this may have worked for us in the past. Here's how I'm thinking about it as a CRO or a CMO or a thought leader. And whereas before it was very much like everyone's doing the same thing, so let me just be contrarian.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I agree. I mean, I think there's a bunch of things you just brought up there that I want to talk with you about. So thanks for kind of setting a good stage here. But let's talk about that particular point for a second, right? So sort of
Sure.
on the heels of this idea of you saw the glorious days of SaaS, right? That the heyday, right? So you and I are both, let's just say, for all intents and purposes, we're both chief revenue officers. I mean, I'm sort of running a business now. I'm a business owner and a founder, but I come from the CRO world, obviously, and the world of the chief revenue officer was impacted so greatly by this grow at all costs sort of climate, which was a long time. I mean, it wasn't just a recent thing. I mean, I think that
Right.
the SaaS business was, in fact, and I'm about to write a big piece about this, is we talk about MFA, made for advertising sites. They're the same thing as
Yeah.
made for revenue businesses, right? They don't really provide sort of a long tail opportunity for customers. They're sort of a flash in the pan, but they're built by a combination of economic forces that understand the way to manipulate the marketplace to drive valuations and make stock prices go up. And that model of being able to get that repetitive revenue became such a big thing because it got companies multiples and it got them to be
Yep.
bought or acquired or right. And so people were making money because they saw a business model as opposed to a solution for people. And lurking amongst a lot of SaaS companies, in my view, are a lot of companies that are putting out products for that reason, right? They're made for revenue businesses. And I think the chief revenue officer role was impacted by that because the job is different when your role is that short term. If you're being told, I got a job like this, I got hired, the CEO told me, we want this company sold in 3 years.
Yeah.
That was a mission, right? It wasn't like help customers solve X problem. It was get this company sold in 3 years, right? That you're gonna, as the president of that company at the time, I had to deploy and implement strategies to meet that end, not anything to do with customers, like almost nothing, in fact. So I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are on, like, has PEG, is it real or is it just because there's no money? I mean, like, if money comes back, will PEG be tossed out the door? And I'm curious if you think we've really reached the shift and if it's permanent or not.
It's a great question. I do think we've reached a shift, and I think we've reached a shift because this is what happens in industries, right? Like you had the industrial revolution, and there's been several iterations of that, right? And I think you're right about the grow at all costs mindset in SaaS. It was not just 2 or 3 years at the end there to 2022. It was for a while, right?
Yep.
And it was about
It
those
was.
high
It was. It was.
valuations.
It was probably back in. I remember back in as early as 2015.
Oh yeah,
Without
for sure.
question, there were companies that were. That's it. That was their business model. Maybe even earlier.
Yeah, it was very much find a product market fit, find something that you could sell the hell out of, and then sell the hell out of it and get a great valuation and flip it, right? And there
Yep.
wasn't the way that you see that, right, is in the execution. I was talking about this the other day. We have so much rigor on the front end of the bow tie. I'm a big I've been using the Winning
Got it.
by Design
Yep.
bow tie. I love
Yep.
that
Love
stuff,
it.
right? I've been,
I agree.
I think
It's
since
brilliant.
2014
Hmm.
or whatever. I think I first saw
Hmm.
it. I was like, there it is. I love
Yep.
that process. There's so much rigor on the front end of the bow tie, right? We know what an MQL is. We've got HubSpot. We've got Salesforce. We've got SQLs. We've got time to, demos per deal. We know what, speed to lead, all the tooling, tech, all the data, revenue operations. There's so much like tight rigor on that part of the fence. The minute the deal closes, like very few companies have the same rigor on the back end, right?
None of them.
And so,
Very few of them do, and people feel it. It's very palpable in the marketplace,
right,
right?
exactly. If you look at it, like we've spent so much because that's what the job has been, right? That's what the
Yep.
CRO job has been. It's like acquisition, acquisition, acquisition. So now it's becoming more of like the revolution, and especially the last couple of years, is you're not gonna continue to scale and win with just new logos, right? You have to be able to land and expand. You have to be able to get your customers to stay lifetime value. And then what does that mean, right? That means that you have to continue to provide value to those customers so they stick around, right? That was always the promise of SaaS, is like
Yep.
they get to pick you every year if you're an annual renewal. They choose at some point like, hey, I want to buy Send7 again, right? I want to buy whatever product you're selling again. And so you have to. Well, I heard one time, it was great. It was like the buying process, that front end of the bow tie, proves that you have a really good sales process and you have product market. You have initial, like you have the initial promise, right? The renewal is them confirming to you that you were right, that what you sold them was right. So I'm going to stick around because what you sold me was right. I got onboarded properly. I trained. This is actually providing the value you told me it was going to provide, and I buy again. The reason why I think that this is going to be ongoing, this efficient growth is going to be here, is because this is kind of what it always was. Like, our private equity firm is fantastic, and we always talk about, like, this is what it always was. Like, you're always looking for finding good customers that stick around, and you have a sticky product that they don't rip out, because it provides that ongoing value, right? That's where it's going to continue to go. So you just see it. You see it in the rigor. There's so much on the front end, not up on the other side of the bow tie. And I think our opportunity is in this shift is to take that rigor that we have on the front of the bow tie and apply it to the back end, so that customers do see continued value in our products. They continue to choose us over time. And then we understand that end of it just as much as we understand the front end of it.
Yeah, look, it's great. I mean, I certainly hope you're right. I'm a big believer in customer value, and I get angry as a customer. We're all customers of somebody, multiple people, of how post sale we get essentially ignored and thrown into a bucket of, okay, good, done. We've got this person's credit card number or whatever, and there's really like, fine, and we've got a big enough engine that we can replace this person if he decides to renew or not renew, because we're just driving so many more deals, and you can feel it, right? I mean, I even talk about this a lot. It's a little boring thing I say, but it's even goes into the way products are designed. So everyone knows this. Maybe it's not something you're conscious of, but when you go to log into any of your dashboards to go log into your account, the login button is like microscopic, but the sign up here button is like massive. Even as a customer, the customer interface is designed for people to acquire a new customer, but not take care of the person who's already paid for the product. And even just that little thing is indicative of every touch point in a business is somehow designed to be a sales tool as opposed to a service tool. And I think that these are little things that when you build a product, thinking more about customers and actually building customer versions of products that are different, distinct from non-customer versions of products, I think is an important thing. So if you don't mind, I want to just back up a bit, because what I want to do is I want to hear a bit more about you and your current role and how these sort of things are being implemented in the company that you're at, a little bit more about how the chief revenue officer role is sort of looked at and viewed, and how you're implemented in your organization.
Yeah, great. I appreciate that. So been with Send7 for 4.5 years now. The company was originally out of New Zealand, bought by private equity in 2019. Pretty small, no US folks at all. Everybody was really out of the New Zealand office. And now I was the first hire as a VP of sales. And now we have almost 100 or so folks here in Denver. We've got 7 locations globally. So we've been growing pretty fast, 5x the revenue to this point. And now we're on our path to really being the market leader that we aspire to be, right? And for our customers. We have over 8,000 customers now, and continue to grow and grow and grow. And we serve. It's interesting for us because we serve a SMB to mid-market clients in inventory management and solving those problems. So it's very much like how we pinpoint our ICP and our personas. They're all it's super fun because they're all very entrepreneurial and disruptive. The folks that want to come up and create a product to be the next disruptive type of product seller out there, right? And
Okay.
so there's this spirit that we talk about all the time, like we don't want people to just buy us. We want them to buy into us. So they could be doing like $1 million of revenue, and they're like, man, I want to grow my business. I'm going to go buy Cent7, and then it can do 25, 30, 50, $100 million of revenue, and they grow along with us, and we grow along with them. So there's very much an entrepreneurial spirit with our customers that we love and enjoy. Like that's why we wake up and do what we do, is because why I wake up and do what I do is because we see these companies come in and they're like, man, I have this problem, my inventory. I can't land it. I'm using spreadsheets. I've made a mistake. It's cost me some money. It's inventory inefficiency is $1 billion problem out there. And it's one of the top 5 reasons small businesses will go out of business. It really is a issue. If you don't hit it right and you don't do it right, it becomes a hindrance to scale as a product seller. So we kind of enjoy solving those problems for them, because then they can actually, I think about it as like the Maslow's triangle of business, right? Like if you can get the foundation right, and then you kind of build on top of that, and we can help you see around corners, give you that visibility and traceability into all your channels and how you're selling. You then can achieve that that business action. You can achieve your goals and that self-actualization top of the triangle there. So it's kind of a fun customer base. Moved into the CRO a year or so ago. Did a lot of work on marketing and branding and messaging to try and hit the right ICP. Spent a lot of time running marketing, and now I'm shifting right to take on customer success and really help continue to build value with our customers as they grow with the product that grow with us part, right?
So you were in a marketing role originally, and you moved into a CRO role. Is that how you migrated over from that position?
No, I was a VP of sales for several years, and then took on the CRO role. Led marketing through some transition.
I see. Okay. So you
then,
came from sales, but they gave you marketing, and you took that over, and that's great.
I came up through marketing. So that was actually my gig for the longest time. Like I started as a graphic designer, to be honest, back in the day. I was doing photo retouching and stuff like that on the East Coast in Jersey. Got into sales, got into tech, and then moved up the food chain on the sales side of it. Became a VP of sales at a pretty big company, and then took this role at Cent7 because I thought it was a great opportunity to come in here and like build and grow like my own sales strategy, my own processes, my own team. A lot of times you don't get to do that, right? A lot of times you join a big company, they have everything kind of built out for you. This was a chance to kind of go create something new and interesting and do my own methodology.
How big was the company revenue wise when you took the CRO role? At what point were they at in their growth?
They were pretty small. They were just crossing, I think, 10 million, something like that. So we had good product market fit, but overall it was the idea of expanding into different countries, right? We hadn't really had a good footprint in the US because it was, New Zealand company, really did some great work in New Zealand, really good product market fit out there. Australia market really had some good traction there, but EMEA and US did not really have that level of traction yet. So that was the goal, was like, hey, get some folks here in the US, start to build out a little bit bigger footprint in the US. And we've done that really well.
So when your company thought about chief revenue officer as a executive position, what was in your view, the sort of mitigating reason? Like what was the business decision why a CRO was needed?
I think this is not just a Cent7 thing. I think this is a go forward thing in SaaS. Is that, we kind of worked I think almost every company I've worked in SaaS, it's been very siloed, right? So like marketing does the marketing stuff, sales does the sales stuff. And there's very much like that baton handover. Like, hey, here's a lead. It's an MQL. Go run with it. Sales goes run with it, turns it out, wins it. Hey, onboarding. Here's a new logo. Here's a new logo. Go run with it. Onboarding, then, here, CS, here's a new logo, right? And in that growth at all cost mindset, we could kind of do that. We could operate in those silos, because what we didn't realize is that in between those teams are these, I call them the gray areas of inefficiency, right? Where there's a lot of, there could be money loss, there could be efficiency loss, conversion loss, like all this stuff where, because you're just kind of like passing things over, right? So we looked at it as an opportunity of bringing sales and marketing together and create like some really good cohesion, really good like gel between those two teams. And plus we're an SMB inbound model. Like our average deal size, we have a product SKU on our website. It's $350 a month, right? So someone buys that, they're a $6,000 a year customer. So a lot of our stuff comes inbound. So what we wanted to do was, hey, instead of sales and marketing working in a silo, what could we do if we can really bring those teams together? And we were able to do that, and we were able to decrease those gray areas and get a lot more efficiency between the two teams. And then now we're looking to do the same thing as deals close one, and how do we bring that efficiency over, right? A good example is we have a free trial, right? Our free trial is a combination of 3 or 4 things, right? It's a combination of a marketing experience, a sales experience, a product experience. And our free trial is set up so that like a product seller can go in and kind of test out what an inventory management solution would be for them. So in a lot of ways, they're doing implementation, right? Whereas if you were to download like a Zoom or a Slack, you're using the product as a user, right? You're using Sin7's free trial as a user, but you're also implementing, right? You're setting up some products. You're seeing how the products flow through. You're seeing how the reporting works, or you're seeing how inventory is managed in the platform. That's somewhat of an onboarding experience, right? So light education, light onboarding. So now, instead of like this linear handoff of lead to sales to close one to onboarding, we see opportunity. And I think there is a lot of opportunity even moving forward in whatever SaaS you're in, enterprise or SMB or whatever product you're selling is. Remove the gaps between the teams and create a little bit more integration and experience, customer experience, buyer experience across as these teams overlap. And I think there's a great opportunity, because in those gray areas is where inefficiency occurs.
Yeah, look, obviously you're singing my tune here. I love it. It's amazing. And, honestly, I don't come across enough companies who have the, I would say, organizational intelligence to recognize that and do something about it. The reason I'm in business and the reason I started my business is because it's not the case. Silos are sort of like the norm, they're protected for obvious reasons, particularly as the company gets more entrenched. Silos are harder to unseat because, people are stakeholders that want to maintain those silos for all sorts of reasons, as you probably understand. And it's leadership, right? I mean, all my clients are founders and CEOs of companies whom kind of understand this idea intellectually, but they're not looking at their companies that way and understanding like how they need to break down those silos and what the process would be, and why unlocking what you said, not only the acceleration that comes from alignment, but also, like you said, all the leaks that are occurring in companies from the silos that they're not aware of. And so we're helping them, what we call, become CRO ready. So my question for you is, why is it, like, what characteristic or what quality was it about your leadership that had that recognition to do that independently when you're an outlier? Okay. Most companies don't make this decision in that way. I'd say you represent, in my view, probably 5 to 10% of companies independently come to that conclusion to put CROs in place that way. Most CROs, as you know, run sales and only exacerbate the problem. Why do you think it is you guys figured this out?
So it's actually super interesting. I think that one of the side effects of what you and I started talking about, where you come in as a sales leader, you're focused on new logo sales, you bring sales through, is how much are you listening to customers, right? How much you listen to the problems you're solving for them. And in a very meta way, not the Facebook meta, but just in like the
Yep.
storyline
Mm-hmm.
meta.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's actually what our customers face. So we went through a really good experience when I took on the marketing role. We were leading the marketing team through a new branding, a new messaging framework. We were like, okay, the business was built with this problem solve in mind. How has that changed over time? Right. And so last year we interviewed a bunch of customers, we interviewed a bunch of partners, we looked at the market dynamics, and we came through this idea that if companies that aren't managing their inventory properly look at the stages of inventory very siloed, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And what happens is they end up losing a lot of revenue in the gaps and the gray pieces in between. We called it like revenue leakage or inventory
Yep.
leakage
Revenue
or
leaks.
inventory inefficiencies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So as we were going through this process, you just start to learn. You're like, wait a minute, this is a very interesting story, and it's relatable to like it's a very much same kind of sales process, right? They're still trying to get marketing inbound. They're just still trying to sell their product. They're still trying to supply their product. We're just doing SaaS. They're just doing soda or games or whatever they're selling, right? So like in between the gaps in what we're trying to do, there's leakage just the same way they are. So it was very much an eye-opening thing for us to be like, you know what, if there's ways that we can continue to work together and break down those silos, I think there's opportunity for us to. And then the other thing I would say too, it's a more funner way to work, right?
Yeah.
You want healthy tensions between. They talk about healthy tension between
Mm-hmm.
teams. You want rigor, but like the part of the idea is like it's so much more fun to have sales and marketing aligned on what an MQL is and why it's a good MQL, as opposed to marketing going, I gave you 100 leads, and the sales team going, well, I don't like them. I like this, what's this tails all the time.
I want the
right?
I want the Glengarry leads. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Totally. I want the Glengarry leads, right? So it's so much better to be like aligned on what a good lead is and continue to work together to make that a better lead tomorrow and a high increase in conversion tomorrow, and look at that as a group as opposed to this kind of like friction between the teams. And the same kind of thing when happens with onboarding is like, look, we're an SMB model. Not every customer we're going to bring is fully scoped and full. Like we're going to do everything we can to set up a customer for success and buy on, but onboarding has to train that customer, right? They have to pick that one up, and not everyone's going to be the same level of technical skill set, awareness. There, a lot of them are going to be super busy. Our customers are super busy. Onboarding knows like, hey, I'm going to have different ICPs, different verticals, and how they pick them up. And I think having good understanding and handoff points creates smoother experience for us internally. But going back to listening to our customers, it also creates a smoother experience for them, right? There's not so much these rigid points in their journey where they go, okay, I bought into the messaging on the website. It speaks to my problem. Then I go into sales, and sales sells me something a little different. Okay, well, that's weird. Then I go into onboarding, and they say, well, something a little different there. Well, that's weird. Like, so if you don't work on the gaps and the gray areas in between, if you don't have that level of cohesion and unification and journey customer across, it not only makes it difficult for your internal teams to execute and solve those inefficiencies, it actually creates a very challenging thing for your customers what do you call it? Like a bumpy ride, right? And so we think about it, the way we think about it is Sin 7 is how do we continually smooth the ride for the customer? So what's on the website for marketing resonates, and they go, oh yeah, that's me. That's the problem I want to go solve. Great. Talk to the sales rep. Yes, we're solving the same problem. It's all aligned. Goes to onboarding. Yes, this is what I expected. This is what I think we're going to do. And then they go through, and then they're excited to renew with the product.
Yeah, no, it's so great. I completely agree with all the point of it, and your observations about what's broken about it, and also what I think you made a good point about what the other side of it is. That it's just better, right? I mean, people work better. Plus, it's funny. So here's the thing: I have this notion about, and I talk about this with my clients, and it's somewhat provocative as per part of our earlier conversation, and that is that one of the pushbacks I get, a lot of people have from on my particular point of view on this is, okay, so if your premise is that the chief revenue officer is going to be the person that oversees all these revenue functions, well, then what do you do with the CMO? like stuff like that, they'll say. And, my notion around this is that the CMO in a B2B company, that's B2C company, but a CMO in a B2B company represents, in my view, an example of a particular syndrome, which is having accelerating people's course career trajectory too early before they make a decision about the way they want their C-suite to be architected, right? Because when you put a chief marketing officer in a business and a chief revenue officer in a business, the natural inclination is that now they're co-leaders and they work together and they build a relationship. But it doesn't solve the problem you and I are talking about, which is that sort of like one neck to choke type of thing where the CRO really is responsible for the entire thing. And, my notion is that I don't think that B2B companies should have CMOs. I think they should have a head of marketing. I think someone should oversee marketing and bring the level of expertise that they would as a CRO. But if you look at titles and the way that titles communicate things and the way that titles create perceptions and the way that people respond to them and the way the C-suite is constructed, I think you're creating a problem. And I think like what I'm saying is that it's foregoing maybe old notions of management and old models of organizational growth and building or hierarchies that are more customer centric. And those things are going to probably have you collapse old ways of thinking about things and the ways in which you move people up the chain, right? So in your case, right, you're like me. I mean, we're both creative, so I come from the creative side too. Even though you very interestingly both have very similar careers. I came from the creative side of the world, and I ended up selling. So it's just interesting. Most people don't, right? Most people don't have that kind of brain, but it's an interesting thing. What I'm saying is that my issue that I see mostly in the engagements that we have is, well, what do we do now? I mean, we agree with you. We think you're right. Like everything you're saying is correct. And we do believe that we see all the efficiencies that would come out of having this more aligned model. But I've got people who are in the C-suite that run these divisions and I can't demote them, So what do I do if I want my CRO to oversee this whole thing? And there's a silo that's created by virtue of these kind of ascendancies that we've put in place. And I think that's a problem. I'm just curious. I have a solution for it, but I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. Let's say your company had a CMO that was your partner, how would a alignment organization be created with that type of a leadership hierarchy?
I think in this transition, CMOs have gotten a bit of a bad rap. I think depending on the physics of your business, depending on what you do and how you do it, right? CMOs can be highly valuable, right? Because if you think about the marketing side of the fence, right? If you're an enterprise company that has, we sell a couple products, right? We don't really have the breadth of products. Let's say maybe a major enterprise company with 24 different products that they sell, right?
Yep.
Some are SaaS, some are on-prem, some are professional service, like all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different work that has to happen there with personas and ICPs and value propositions. And so in those type of environments, I mean, CMOs specifically with product marketing and social and ads and all that kind of stuff, it becomes like an expertise. It is an expertise that needs to be valued.
Yep.
I think one of the challenges of rolling marketing to CROs is, I feel lucky that I have the creative background because I could provide a lot of value in the coaching of those folks. We have some great folks on the team, but directionally, I understand what they're trying to do and what they're trying to say. If I'm just coming from the sales side, I mean, and a lot of times it's just like you don't have that visibility. So it might be easier for some folks like us that have that creative background to understand, why certain things about brand are important or why certain things about how we go and with PR and SEO and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a ton of value there as far as like what CMOs can bring to the table. On the flip side, I think that the CRO from the revenue side of like customer success and upsell and expansion, that motion feels a lot more natural to me for a lot of C-level, for sales leaders, right?
Yep.
right? I know what in a lot of ways, some ways, some physics, they're like, hey, sales, new logo sales, those reps own the deal for a year. They own them for 2 years, or they just, in a thing where you're targeting the top 500, top 1,000 accounts, you own it forever, right?
Yep.
So there is that much more aligned kind of similar skill set across the revenue, every dollar in, every dollar out.
Yep.
That I think that skill set's there. To me, when you talk about the value of a CMO versus the value of a CRO and how it all plays together, I think it has to go with the physics of your business and then the skill sets of your team. Good example is if you continue on the path, like you have CPOs and you have, chief engineering folks, and like, there's a lot of folks that there's lines there that, depending on your skill set, you may not be a great engineering leader. You're just a great product leader. Right. And so how can you really provide that value to an engineering team? Right. Or there's some product leaders out there that are great, come from engineering, and they're great at it. Right. So they can provide value. I think to me, it becomes a skill set thing of where you want to grow and learn. And I think like I said, I see a lot of value in CMOs, talked to a lot of them over the last year. And I think that there's, something to be said about just the intricacies of what good marketing is today.
Yep. I'm in agreement. I would say that if I would maybe attenuate my opinion, I'm in complete agreement with you that if you're an enterprise company, you need a CMO for the very reasons you said. It's just too complex at that point. You need a person who just has a really good grasp of marketing strategy, and it should be a chief marketing officer. There's no question. I mean, you look at a big company like a Salesforce, something like that, there has to be somebody who's overseeing that baby. That's a big job, no doubt. I'm referring to maybe be a little more clear about companies more that fall into, let's say, the 15 to 100 million or $250 million in revenues. They're not enterprise companies. They're at that point where, like you said, they're finding their base. They found their product market fit, right? The marketing organization is critical. I'm a marketer. I mean, I have a marketing agency, so I have no disrespect to marketing. It's really more, it has less to do with the value of marketing. It has more to do with the way that the C-suite's constructed so that the silos are maintained in the right, kind of, they're managed, if they will, right? And I see my reason for bringing this up is I think at early stage companies, I see companies at like 10 or 15 million in revenues that have a chief marketing officer, which I think is too soon to have one for given the reasons I'm talking about. And if I want to build a revenue engine that's aligned, I think a CRO would be the right ascension because that person would be able to kind of look at all things. And I also agree with you, just want to make sure I'm hitting all your points, that a sales focused leader who becomes a CRO, which as you and I both know, most of them come from sales, and that's a problem we can get into in a second. They're right. You're right. They don't necessarily always have the right sort of brains to understand how marketing works, but you're right. They're usually customer centric because they're selling to customers and they have those relationships. They have that skill set. So you're correct about this. And I'd say the correction on that would be make sure you get a really good head of marketing that does understand that that reports into you so that you can kind of maybe compensate maybe for the stuff that you don't understand. But I agree. I think that the sales focused, sales oriented CRO has a blind spot on the marketing side, which is why it is that most of the time I see CROs not get marketing. Like they don't get control over it. They're not giving it. They're giving customer success a lot, maybe even product. And I guess that leads to my next question, which is, and you probably answered it, but let's get into it a little bit more. What do you think makes the right CRO? So if you're in a marketplace right now, you're a CEO of a company and you're at like 15, 20 million revenues, and you're looking to create a chief revenue officer role for the reasons that you and I just said. They agree that there's an alignment issue. What's the type of background that you think would make the best CROs today in today's marketplace?
It's a good question. And I think you're hitting on a couple points there. And I want to kind of
sure.
I could even argue that if you're a 10 to $15 million startup, do you need a CRO at that point?
Yep.
Right.
It's a good question. Or, maybe not. Maybe not.
Maybe you just need a VP of sales but I think what makes a good CRO is you have to be good at a little bit of everything, right? You have to understand marketing because you have to understand the messaging framework, the value, you understand the messaging in the brand and why that's all valuable. You have to understand where your lead's coming from, inbound, outbound. You have to really be good at finance, right? There's got to be some aspect of finance in your brain. One of the challenges I see with young sales leaders is they may come up and just expect to be handed a rev build or handed the plan and here's your target and go run at it, and they're good at that. But to take the next step, um, building commission plans that really motivate, building incentive plans, hitting targets consistently. It's really understanding I go back to the physics, but the ins and outs of your specific business and how that works from a finance to perspective. But I also like, as we move into the customer side thing, I go back to the other side of the bow tie. I think I like the idea of CROs running all revenue as far as like dollars in, dollars out, because it does give you a lot more awareness, understanding. You talk to more customers than you would if you're just a sales focused new logo VP. You understand the value prop over time and how it grows. You understand why people expand. One of the best things we talk about is everyone talks about churn, and they say, why do people leave? Why do people leave? What are the churn codes? What are the reasons? Why do people stay? Why do customers renew over and over again? Why do they see ongoing value out of your platform? Like, the more you understand that, it's very easy to take that and bring that right in front of the sales process, right? Mm-hmm. And so that customer that's on the fence, I'm not sure if this is the right thing for me. Well, we have 400 or 500 customers that are in your space doing exactly what you did. They're just a little further ahead of you, and they love our product, and here's why. And it just makes it much more of a cohesive story. You start to avoid things like the theme of like bad fit sales. We all hear about that, like sales reps just selling whatever they can and whoever they can. That's always the trope there. But if you know that your goal is not just to bring them in, but to bring them in, have them grow, stick around, extend lifetime value, then you become, then you have a sales leader that's really thinking about the whole journey of a mm-hmm. customer, which means they're thinking about all the revenue. And I think that's to me, those are the kinds of things. The one thing I'll say is, like you say, what makes a good CRO? I think what makes any good leader is I think about this all the time. We all talk about in sales and sales leadership about scaling businesses, right? That's what we wake up in the morning, we're like, I got to scale this business. I rarely hear us talk about scaling ourselves, right? And so one of the things that I always think about, I don't know, call it talk about or focus on, is I want to be a great leader for this company when it was, 10 million. But I also want to be a great leader for this company when it's 100 million. And we've all heard the stories of, 150 and 200 million, right? And we've all heard the stories of, outgrow, got to go out and find a new leader, outgrow, got to go find a new leader, right?
Yep.
I always look at imposter syndrome as somewhat of a positive, right? Because if I can work and scale myself to a certain role, then I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to learn what I don't know. And I'm going to continue to learn what I don't know, not just for myself and my own career, but for my team, so that when the company's looking around, when we hit that, $100 million mark or that $200 million mark, and they're looking around and go, do we have the right leaders in place for this next phase of growth? They're going to look at me and go, yeah, we do. And that's why I wake up and do what I do and continue to learn and continue to grow. And I think what makes a good CRO also makes a good leader in any CMO, CPO, whatever, CEO, is continually work to scale yourself as you grow into the next phase of growth for your business.
Yep.
So you can be the best leader you can be for your team.
Yeah, I say to my clients, you can't delegate leadership. A lot of other things you can do. You can delegate a lot of things, but that's yours. You own that, and you got to get good at it. And you have to have the right motivation for it. And I agree that it's all about self-growth and self-development. When people see a leader who's looking to grow and develop, it shows up in the way they deal with people. It makes them trust them more. No one wants to work for a know-it-all. It's like the worst thing. And none of us are know-it-alls. I can say that one.
Yeah, there's a great I don't want to be a know-it-all, I want to be a learn-it-all.
Yeah, there you
Right?
go.
Like,
Yep.
just keep learning, just keep growing. Um, and that's the exciting stuff. Part of what we're trying to figure out is, and this, you mentioned LinkedIn in the beginning, is like we're all trying to figure out what this next phase of growth is going to be in this new model for SaaS. And if you're not learning, you're trying to apply old models. One thing I know that doesn't work anymore is come and get a new job and just drop an old model in place and hope it works.
That's
Right?
right.
We know that, right?
100%.
So
Yep. It's all got to
we know
be
the
based on where.
playbooks,
Yes, that's so
right? We
accurate.
know that. So what does that mean? Come in, learn. We have a theme at Sin Sevens, like you spend your first 30 days, no matter what role you are, you're just learning,
Yep.
right? But it's learn, then listen, then lead, right? And if you can come in and do those three things in that order, you have a real shot at being successful, and you have a real shot at bringing everybody along. And I think our leaders do a great job of that.
That's terrific. Well, as a not surprised, this is a really great conversation. I have one final question we can kind of close out, and that is, I'm curious to know if you weren't doing this, if you weren't at Sin 7 or a CRO, and you can do whatever you want, what would it be?
Oh man, I was talking about this the other day. I actually would love to be a sports agent.
Like a Scott
I
Boras
know
type guy?
the huh?
Like
Like a Jerry
a Jerry
Maguire.
Maguire, Scott Boras type guy?
And I know they get such a bad rap, and and everyone's like, the sleazy agent kind of trope and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
there's something to me about, and maybe it's not a sports agent, but maybe it's a GM or something. There's something to me about putting together a team of talented people and bringing
Mm-hmm.
a team together and watching them work. Like I get the most excitement out of recruiting, hiring good, talented people. Maybe you see something in them that there's a glimmer there, like, oh man, this person can really hit it home. They could really come in and make an impact.
Mm-hmm.
And then watch them come in, watch them gel with a team, and then watch them grow and do well. That gives me the most joy. So, I can imagine a GM of a football team or a baseball
Mm-hmm.
team, like putting together a Moneyball team,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and all of a sudden that team's winning. Like I really dig that stuff.
That's great. Well, it's applicable to what you're doing right now, right? I mean, you are doing that. You're finding talent, you're putting them out in the field, and you're developing them, and you're creating a team for them to play with. That's cool. I mean, I love that. That's a neat one. I never heard that one. So is there any way that you want people to get a hold of you? Is there any way you're looking to communicate with people? How can we support you while everyone's listening to this right now about what you're up to right now?
Oh, sure. Look, I am always reaching out and learning from thought leaders out there. And I always say, like, hey, if someone posts something great or I really like it, I'll reach out and thank them for the post, or
Mm-hmm.
hey, if you got a couple minutes, let's chat. So I'm 100% willing to reciprocate that. Right. So hit me up on LinkedIn, send me a DM in there, and always happy to jump on a call and talk through anything. If I can provide any insight, I'm happy to do it. I see, what we build and what we've built at Sin 7 is a great revenue engine. And
Yep.
that is hire great people, put them in positions to win, put a great process together, and then, how your systems all integrate with that. So I'm always open to talk those three things, and how I can help those out there.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Frank. It's a great conversation, and not as I expected. I love hearing from seasoned chief revenue officers, and you gave me some encouragement that there's some companies out there that are thinking creatively and correctly about how to deploy one. So it's encouraging. So I appreciate your time, and I look forward to connecting with you more and continue our dialogues.
Warren, thanks for the invite. Love the time today.
Great. Thank you for listening to the CRO Spotlight Podcast. The CRO Collective's mission is to help CROs succeed and help founders and CEOs build CRO-ready organizations. You can find out more information about our services at thecrocollective.com. That's thecrocollective.com. And we look forward to having you join us next time.